Welcome to Riverside Readings, a dramatic audio drama hosted by me, Trent Miley, where we bring the classics to life. As we return to the river, we'll dive into the world of science fiction and the influential literary works that have shaped generations. We'll kick off this journey with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. This groundbreaking novel, considered the birth of the science fiction genre, was penned in the summer of 1816 as a bet by Lord Byron when Shelley was just 18 years old during a weekend getaway. The story explores themes like scientific advancements, the dangers of overreaching, and human vulnerability. Joining me on this adventure will be a team of fellow navigators.
Patrick Eldon,
Morgan Elizabeth Irby,
Bakari Garvin,
David James Peveler,
Ella Talmadge,
And yours truly, Trent Patrick Miley. We are excited to be your guides today and share our journey with you. Without further ado, here is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, on Riverside Readings, a dramatic audio drama where we bring the classics to life.
Letter 1. To Mrs. Seville, England, St. Petersburg, December 11th, 1798. You will rejoice to hear that no disaster has accompanied the commencement of an enterprise you have regarded with such evil forebodings. I have arrived here yesterday, and my first task is to assure my dear sister of my welfare and increasing confidence in the success of my undertaking. I am already far north of London, and as I walk in the streets of Petersburg, I feel a cold northern breeze play upon my cheeks, which braces my nerves and fills me with delight. Do you understand this feeling? This breeze, which has traveled from the regions toward which I am advancing, gives me a foretaste of those icy climes. Inspired by this wind of promise, my daydreams become more fervent and vivid. I try in vain to be persuaded that the pole is the seat of frost and desolation. It ever presents itself to my imagination as the region of beauty and delight. There, Margaret, the sun is forever visible, its broad disc just skirting the horizon and diffusing a perpetual splendor. Therefore, with your leave, my sister, I will put some trust in preceding navigators. There snow and frost are banished, and, sailing over a calm sea, we may be wafted to a land surpassing in wonders and beauty every region hitherto discovered on the habitual globe. Its productions and features may be without example, as the phenomena of the heavenly bodies undoubtedly are in those undiscovered solitudes. What may not be expected in a country of eternal light? I may discover the wondrous power attracting the needle and regulate 1,000 celestial observations that require only this voyage to render their seeming eccentricities consistent forever. I shall satiate my ardent curiosity with the sight of a part of the world never before visited, and may tread a land never before imprinted by man's foot. These are my enticements, and they are sufficient to conquer all fear of danger or death, and to induce me to commence this laborious voyage with the joy a child feels when he embarks in a little boat with his holiday mates on an expedition of discovery up his native river. But supposing all these conjectures to be false, you cannot contest the infinite benefit which I shall confer on all mankind, to the last generation, by discovering a passage near the pole to those countries, to reach which at present so many months are requisite, or by ascertaining the secret of the magnet, which, if at all possible, can only be effected by an undertaking such as mine. These reflections have dispelled the agitation with which I began my letter, and I feel my heart glow with an enthusiasm which elevates me to heaven. For nothing contributes so much to tranquilize the mind as a steady purpose, a point on which the soul may fix its intellectual eye. This expedition was my favorite dream in my early years. I have read with ardor the accounts of the various voyages in the prospect of arriving at the North Pacific Ocean through the seas surrounding the pole. You may recall that a history of all the voyages made for discovery comprised the entirety of our esteemed Uncle Thomas's library. My education was neglected, yet I was passionately fond of reading. These volumes were my study day and night, and my familiarity with them increased the regret I had felt as a child on learning that my father's dying injunction had forbidden my uncle to allow me to embark in a seafaring life. These visions faded when I perused, for the first time, those poets whose effusions entranced my soul and lifted it to heaven. I also became a poet and, for 1 year, lived in a paradise of my creation. I might also carve out a niche in the temple where the names of Homer and Shakespeare are revered. You are familiar with my past failures and how deeply I bore the disappointment. But just at that time, I inherited the fortune of my cousin, and my thoughts were turned into the channel of their earlier bent. 6 years have passed since I resolved my present undertaking. I can, even now, remember the hour from which I dedicated myself to this great enterprise. I commenced by injuring my body through hardship. I accompanied the whale fishers on several expeditions to the North Sea. I voluntarily endured cold, famine, thirst, and want of sleep. I often worked harder than the common sailors during the day and devoted my nights to the study of mathematics and those branches of physical science from which a naval adventurer might derive the most significant practical advantage. Twice, I hired myself as an undermate in a Greenland whaler and acquitted myself to admiration. I must admit, I felt a little proud when my captain offered me the second dignity in the vessel and entreated me to remain with the greatest earnestness. So valuable did he consider my services. And now, dear Margaret, do I not deserve to accomplish some great purpose? My life might have passed in ease and luxury, but I preferred glory to every enticement that wealth placed in my path. Oh, that some encouraging voice would answer in the affirmative. My courage and my resolution are firm, but my hopes fluctuate and my spirits are often depressed. I am about to proceed on a long and difficult voyage, the emergencies of which will demand all my fortitude. I am required not only to raise the spirits of others, but sometimes to sustain my own when theirs are failing. This is the most favorable period for traveling in Russia. They fly quickly over the snow in their sledges. The motion is pleasant and far more agreeable than the English stagecoach. The cold is not excessive. If you are wrapped in furs or dress, I have already adopted, for there is a significant difference between walking the deck and remaining motionless for hours, with no exercise prevents the blood from freezing in your veins. I have no ambition to lose my life on the post road between St. Petersburg and Archangel. I shall depart for the latter town in a fortnight or 3 weeks. I intend to hire a ship there, which can easily be done by paying the insurance for the owner, and to engage as many sailors as necessary among those accustomed to whale fishing. I do not intend to sail until June. And when shall I return? Ah, dear sister, how can I answer this question? Many months, perhaps years, will pass if I succeed before you and I meet. If I fail, you will see me again soon, or never. Farewell, my dear, excellent Margaret. May heaven shower down blessings on you and save me so that I may again and again testify to the gratitude for all of your love and kindness. Your affectionate brother, R. Walton. Letter 2 to Mrs. Seville, England, Archangel, 28th March, 1799. Ah, how slowly the time passes here, encompassed as I am by frost and snow. Yet, a second step is taken towards my enterprise. I have hired a vessel and am occupied in collecting my sailors. Those I have already engaged appear to be men on whom I can depend and possess dauntless courage. But I have no friend, Margaret. While I am glowing with enthusiasm of success, there will be none to participate in my joy. If I am assailed by disappointment, no one will endeavor to sustain me in dejection. I desire the company of a man who could sympathize with me, whose eyes would reply to mine. You may deem me romantic, my dear sister, but I bitterly feel the want of a friend. I am too ardent in execution and too impatient with difficulties. But it is still a greater evil that I am self-educated. It is true that I have thought more and that my daydreams are more extended and magnificent. But I greatly need a friend who would have enough sense not to despise me as a romantic and affection enough for me to endeavor to regulate my mind. These are useless complaints. I shall find no friend on the vast ocean, nor even here in Archangel, among merchants and seamen. Yet some feelings, unallied to the dross of human nature, beat even in these rugged bosoms. My lieutenant is a man of remarkable courage and enterprise. He is madly desirous of glory. He is an Englishman, and he retains some of the noblest endowments of humanity. I first became acquainted with him on board a whale vessel. Finding him unemployed in his city, I easily engaged him to assist in my enterprise. The master is a person of excellent disposition and is remarkable in the ship for his gentleness and mildness of his discipline. This circumstance, combined with his well-known integrity and dauntless courage, made me eager to engage him. At a youth passed in solitude, my best years spent under Your gentle and feminine fosterage has so refined the groundwork of my character that I cannot overcome an intense distaste to the usual brutality exercised on board the ship. I have never believed it to be necessary, and when I heard of a mariner equally noted for his kindliness of heart and the respect and obedience paid to him by his crew, I felt myself peculiarly fortunate in being able to secure his services. I heard of him first in rather a romantic manner, from a lady who owes him the happiness of her life. This, briefly, is his story. Some years ago, he traded a life of luxury and comfort away for a life at sea, due to the unforeseen circumstance that his wife loved another man. Instead of recusing her to torment and unbridled love, he gave away his possessions to the man she chose and went his separate ways. "What a noble fellow!" you will exclaim. He is so, but unfortunately he is wholly uneducated. He is silent and ignorant and careless, which, while it renders his conduct the more astonishing, detracts from the interest and sympathy he would otherwise command. I cannot describe my sensations on the near prospect of my undertaking. It is impossible to communicate a conception of the trembling sensation, half pleasurable and half fearful, with which I prepare to depart. I am going to unexplored regions, to the land of mist and snow, but I shall kill no albatross. Therefore, do not be alarmed for my safety, or if I should come back to you as worn and woeful as the ancient mariner. There is something at work in my soul which I do not understand. Still, besides this, there is a love for the marvelous, a belief in the marvelous, intertwined in all my projects, which hurries me out of the common pathways of men, even to the wild sea and unvisited regions I am about to explore. Shall I meet you again after traversing immense seas and returning by the most southern cape of Africa or America? I dare not expect such success, yet I cannot bear to look at the reverse of the picture. I love you very tenderly. Remember me with affection, should you never hear from me again. Your affectionate brother, Robert Walton. Letter 3 to Mrs. Seville, England, July 7th. My dear sister, I write a few lines in haste to say I am safe and well advanced on my voyage. This letter will reach England by a merchantman now, on its homeward voyage from Archangel, more fortunate than I, who may not see my native land for many years. I am, however, in good spirits. My men are bold and firm of purpose, nor do the floating sheets of ice that continually pass us, indicating the dangers of the region towards which we are advancing, appear to dismay them. We have already reached a very high latitude. Still, it is the height of summer, and although not so warm as in England, the southern gales blow us speedily towards those shores I so ardently desire to attain. and breathe a degree of renovating warmth I have not expected. No incidents have thereto befallen us that would make a figure in a letter. One or two stiff gales in the spring of a leak or accident experienced navigators scarcely remember to record, and I shall be well content if nothing worse happens to us during our voyage. Adieu, my dear Margaret. I will not rashly encounter danger for my own sake and yours. I will be cool, persevering, and prudent, but success shall crown my endeavors. Wherefore not? Thus far I have gone, tracing a secure way over the pathless seas, the very stars themselves being witnesses and testimonies of my triumph. Why not proceed over the untamed yet obedient element? What can stop the determined heart and resolved will of man? My swelling heart involuntarily pours itself out thus. But I must finish. Heaven bless my beloved sister, R.W. Letter 4. To Mrs. Seville, England, August 5th. It is so strange that an accident has happened to us that I cannot forbear recording it, although it is probable that you will see me before these papers come into your possession. Last Monday, July 31st, we were nearly surrounded by ice, which closed in the ship on all sides, scarcely leaving her the sea room where she floated. Our situation was somewhat dangerous, especially as a thick fog surrounded us. We accordingly lay down, hoping that some change would occur in the atmosphere and weather. About 2 o'clock, the mist cleared away, and we beheld vast and irregular plains of ice stretched out in every direction, which seemed to have no end. Some of my comrades groaned, and my mind grew watchful with anxious thoughts, when a strange sight suddenly attracted our attention and diverted our solicitude from our situation. We perceived a low carriage fixed on a sledge and drawn by dogs, passing on towards the north at the distance of half a mile. A being which had the shape of a man, but apparently of gigantic stature, sat in the sledge and guided the dogs. We watched the rapid progress of the traveler with our telescopes until he was lost among the distant inequalities of the ice. This appearance excited our unqualified wonder. We were, as we believed, many hundred miles from any land, but this apparition seemed to denote that it was not, in reality, so distant as we supposed. Shut in, however, by ice, it was impossible to follow his track, which we had observed with the greatest attention. About 2 hours after this occurrence, we heard the ground sea, and before nightfall, the ice broke and freed our ship. We, however, lay until the morning, fearing to encounter in the dark those large, loose masses that float about after the ice breaks up. I took advantage of this time to rest for a few hours. In the morning, however, as soon as it was light, I went onto the deck and found all the sailors busy on one side of the vessel, apparently talking to someone in the sea. It was, in fact, a sledge, like that we had seen before, which had drifted towards us in the night on a large fragment of ice. Only one dog remained alive, but there was a human being within it whom the sailors were persuading to enter the vessel. He was not, as the other travelers seemed to be, a savage inhabitant of some undiscovered island, but a European.
Here is our captain, and he will not allow you to perish on the open sea. Before I board your vessel, could you please inform me where you are headed?
You may conceive my astonishment on hearing such a question addressed to me from a man on the brink of destruction, and to whom I should have supposed that my vessel would have been a resource which he would not have exchanged for the most precious wealth the earth can afford. I replied, however, that we were on a voyage of discovery towards the northern pole. Upon hearing this, he appeared satisfied and consented to come on board. Good God, Margaret, if you had seen the man who thus capitulated for his safety, your surprise would have been boundless. His limbs were nearly frozen, and his body dreadfully emaciated by fatigue and suffering. I never saw a man in such a wretched condition. We attempted to carry him into the cabin, but as soon as he had quitted the fresh air, he fainted. We brought him back to the deck and restored him to animation by rubbing him with brandy and forcing him to swallow a small quantity. As soon as he showed signs of life, we wrapped him up in blankets and placed him near the chimney of the kitchen stove. Slowly, he recovered and ate a little soup, which restored him wonderfully. 2 days passed in this manner before he was able to speak, and I often feared that his sufferings had deprived him of understanding. When he had somehow recovered, I removed him to my cabin and attended to him as much as my duty would permit. I never saw a more interesting creature. His eyes have generally an expression of wilderness and even madness, but there are moments when, if anyone performs an act of kindness towards him or does him the most trifling service, his whole countenance is lightened up, as it were, with a beam of benevolence and sweetness that I never saw equaled. But he is generally melancholy and despairing, and sometimes he gnashes his teeth as if impatient of the weight of woes that oppress him. When my guest was a little recovered, I had great trouble keeping off the men who wished to ask him 1,000 questions. Still, I would not allow him to be tormented by their idle curiosity, in a state of body and mind whose restoration depended on the entire repose.
Why did you come up so far up the ice in such a strange vehicle to seek one who fled from me? And did the man whom you pursued travel in the same fashion? Yes. I fancy we've seen him. The day before we picked you up, we saw some dogs drawing a sledge with a man in it across the ice.
This aroused the stranger's attention, and he asked many questions concerning the route the demon, as he called him, had pursued.
I have, doubtless, excited your curiosity, as well as that of these good people. But you are too considerate to make inquiries.
Certainly, it would indeed be very impertinent and inhuman in me to trouble you with any inquisitiveness of mine.
You rescued me from a strange and perilous situation and restored me to life.
Soon after, he inquired if I thought breaking up the ice had destroyed the other sledge. I replied that I could not answer with any degree of certainty, for the ice had not broken until near midnight, and the traveler might have arrived at a place of safety before that time. But of this, I could not judge. From this time, a new spirit of life animated the decaying frame of the stranger. He manifested the greatest eagerness to be on deck to watch for the sledge that had appeared before. but I have persuaded him to remain in the cabin, for he is far too weak to sustain the rawness of the atmosphere. I have promised that someone should watch for him and give him instant notice if any new object should appear in sight. Such is my journal of what relates to this strange occurrence up to the present day. The stranger has gradually improved in health, but is very silent and appears uneasy when anyone except me enters the cabin. Yet his manners are so conciliating and gentle, the sailors are all interested in him, although they have had very little communication with him. For my part, I begin to love him as a brother, and his constant and deep grief fills me with sympathy and compassion. He must have been a noble creature in his better days, even now in wreck, so attractive and amiable. I said in one of my letters, my dear Margaret, that I should find no friend on the vast ocean. Yet I have found a man who, before his spirit had been broken by misery, I should have been happy to have possessed as the brother of my heart. I shall continue to record my journal concerning the stranger at intervals, should I have any fresh incidents to report. August 13th. My affection for my guest increases every day. He excites at once my admiration and my pity to an astonishing degree. How can I see so noble a creature destroyed by misery without feeling the most poignant grief? He is so gentle yet wise. His mind is so cultivated, and when he speaks, although his words are cold with the choicest art, they flow with rapidity and unparalleled eloquence. He has recovered from his illness and is continually on the deck, apparently watching for the sledge that preceded his own. Yet, although unhappy, he is not so utterly occupied by his misery that he interests himself deeply in the projects of others. He has frequently conversed with me on mine, which I have communicated to him without disguise. He entered attentively into all my arguments in favor of my eventual success, and into every minute detail of the measures I had taken to secure it. I was easily led by the sympathy which he evinced to use the language of my heart, to give utterance to the burning ardor of my soul, and to say, with all the fervor that warmed me, how gladly I would sacrifice my fortune, my existence, my every hope, to the furtherance of my enterprise. One man's life or death was but a small price to pay for the acquisition of the knowledge which I sought, for the dominion I should acquire and transmit over the elemental foes of our race. As I spoke, a dark gloom spread over my listener's countenance. At first, I perceived that he tried to suppress his emotion. He placed his hands before his eyes, and my voice quivered and failed me as I beheld tears trickle fast from between his fingers. A groan burst from his heaving breast.
Unhappy man, do you share my madness? Have you also drunk of the intoxicating draught? Hear me. Let me reveal my tale. You will dash the cup from your lips.
Such words, you may imagine, strongly excited my curiosity. But the paroxysm of grief that I have seized stranger overcame his weakened powers, and many hours of repose and tranquil conversation were necessary to restore his composure. Having conquered the violence of his feelings, he appeared to despise himself for being the slave of passion. Quelling the dark tyranny of despair, he led me again to converse about myself. He asked me about my history, the tale that was quickly told, but it awakened various trains of reflection. I spoke of my desire to find a friend, of my thirst of more intimate sympathy with a fellow mind than had ever fallen to my lot, and expressed my conviction that a man could boast of little happiness who did not enjoy this blessing.
I agree with you. We are unfashioned creatures. but half made up, with one wiser, better, dearer than ourselves such a friend ought to be. Do not lend his aid to perfectionate our weak and faulty natures. I once had a friend, the most noble human creature, and am entitled to judge concerning friendship. You have hope, the world before you, and no cause for despair. But I have lost everything, and cannot begin life anew.
As he said this, his countenance became expressive of a calm, settled grief that touched me to the heart. But he was silent and presently retired to his cabin. Even broken in spirit as he is, no one can feel more deeply than he does the beauties of nature. The starry sky, the sea, the every sight afforded by these wonderful regions still seem to have the power to elevate his soul from earth. Such a man has a double existence. He may suffer misery and be overwhelmed by disappointments. Yet when he is retired into himself, he will be like a celestial spirit that has a halo around him, within whose circle no grief or folly ventures. Will you smile at the enthusiasm I express concerning this divine wanderer? You would not if you saw him. You have been tutored and refined by books and retirement from the world, and you are therefore somewhat fastidious. But this only renders you the more fit to appreciate the extraordinary merits of this remarkable man. Sometimes I have endeavored to discover what quality he possesses that elevates him so immeasurably above any other person I've ever known. I believe it to be an intuitive discernment, a quick but never failing power of judgment, a penetration into the causes of things, unequaled for clearness and precision, and to this a facility of expression and a voice whose varied intonations are soul-subduing music. August 19th.
You may easily perceive, Captain Walton, that I have suffered great and unparalleled misfortunes. I had once determined that the memory of these evils would die with me. But you have won me to alter my determination. You seek knowledge and wisdom, as I once did, and I ardently hope that the gratification of your wishes may not be a serpent to sting you, as mine has been. I do not know that the relation of my disasters will be helpful to you. Yet, when I reflect that you are pursuing the same course, exposing yourself to the same dangers which have rendered me what I am, I imagine that you may deduce an apt moral from my tale, one that may direct you if you succeed in your undertaking, and console you in case of failure. Prepare to hear of occurrences which are usually deemed marvelous. Were we among the tamer scenes of nature, I might fear to encounter your unbelief, perhaps your ridicule. But many things will appear possible in these wild and mysterious regions, which would provoke the laughter of those unacquainted with the ever-varied powers of nature. Nor can I doubt but that my tale conveys in its series internal evidence of the truth of the events of which it is composed.
You may easily imagine that the offered communication much gratified me, yet I could not endure that he should renew his grief by a recital of his misfortunes. I felt the greatest eagerness to hear the promised narrative, partly from curiosity and partly from a strong desire to ameliorate his fate if it were in my power. I expressed these feelings in my answer.
Thank you for your sympathy, but it is useless. My fate is nearly fulfilled. I wait for one event, and then I shall repose in peace. I understand your feeling, but you are mistaken, my friend. If you allow me to name you, nothing can alter my destiny. Listen to my history, and you will perceive how irrevocably it is determined.
He told me he would commence his narrative the next day when I was leisurely. This promise drew from me the warmest thanks. I have resolved every night, when I am not imperatively occupied by my duties, to record as nearly as possible in his own words what he has related during the day. If I am engaged, I will at least make notes. This manuscript will doubtless afford you the greatest pleasure, but to me, who knows him and has heard it from his lips, with what interest and sympathy shall I read it some day? Even now, as I commence my task, his full-toned voice swells in my ears. His lustrous eyes dwell on me with all their melancholy sweetness. I see his thin hand raised in animation, while the lineaments of his face are irradiated by the soul within. Strange and harrowing must be his story. Frightful the storm which embraced the gallant vessel on its course and wrecked it thus.